Damage is incredibly important, which is why in today's video we are going to be talking about how you can maximize your damage by increasing your stats and overall getting the most from your weapon. A lot of things have changed since the last time I talked about this, so this is a complete and updated guide. You can find all of the timestamps for the things I'm talking about in the description if you want to watch something again, and because these videos take a long time to make, I would really appreciate if you could subscribe to my channel. Okay, let's move on. So first up is choosing a weapon. There are a ton of different weapons in Hypixel Skyblock. Each of them have positives and negatives. Going over every single item would take its entire own video. So this is going to be a more broad guide that will cover how to boost your damage with any weapon. But the general rule is just go for the more expensive weapon when you can afford it, because it will generally be better. Please note that there are exceptions to this. Do not go and buy a Midas. For example, there's other ones. But sword advice is really easy to find. And if you're watching this, you probably already have a weapon, so let's move on. Next up on the list of important things is reforging properly. The proper use of the blacksmith on your weapon can drastically change its stats. For example, this wither reforge on the Hyperion gives it extra strength and damage, whereas this sharp reforge on the aspect of the end gives it extra crit chance and crit damage. Certain weapons will have different reforges, but the good philosophy is to go by the wither reforge, which is generally good for most weapons. If you can afford that, that's generally a good choice, but you could also go for fabled, which uses the dragon claw, or the spicy reforge straight from the blacksmith if you can't afford those. There are some exceptions, but that's some general advice to follow. Now, armor has really not so general advice. You want Ancient for most of your armor pieces. That's not debatable. As you can see, it adds a pretty insane amount of stats to basically every single item, with the big pitfall being the quite high price. But it's 100% worth it if you can afford it, especially if you're planning to play at least some dungeons. If you're with a bow for your main weapon, then the common advice is the precise reforge from the optical lens reforge stone, but it does generally change around with specific bows. Like for the bone meringues, I know that it's different. It's normally the spiritual one, and that advice can drastically change around based on which bow you have, especially when you get to the higher caliber bows. So always do extra research specific to your weapon for reforging. Next up, we're going to talk about gemstones. Surprisingly, a lot of people don't use these. When you put weapons in the slot, you can pick a gemstone to add onto it, and this can boost the damage by quite a lot. If you're looking for a straight up damage boost, I recommend the Jasper gemstone, the highest tier you can afford, as it adds extra strength. So just buy any Jasper gemstone. They can be out on the bazaar for not that expensive depending on quality, and go over to the gemstone grinder, put in a sword. For example, let's use this Shadow Fury, put in the gemstone, and just click, take it out, and boom, you've now applied it, and you can see it added a little bit of extra strength. So it's definitely worth it if you have the time, because that extra strength is definitely worth it. But always remember, it's not actually that huge a boost. At the highest level, it's only 12 extra strength, which does make a difference, but is not worth breaking the bank for, so don't make this a super high priority upgrade. Surprisingly forgotten is enchanting. Enchanting your items makes a huge difference, and a lot of people don't do it. I could go through every single enchant you need, but it's probably just going to be easier if I put up a list on screen, and you pause the video now to apply which enchants you want. I've already got all of the ones that I want on here, so there's not much to apply. But for example, this Wither Cloak has nothing on it, so I have a lot of different things to apply to it. But it's definitely worth doing. I'm going to discuss ultimate enchants later on, because they can make a huge difference. As you can see, I've got ultimate Ys on both of these tools, which actually make a huge difference for my performance. Next is in the pets menu. Now if you're going for damage, pets make a huge difference. These can vary in different situations, particularly for certain classes and dungeons, but here is some common advice. The legendary Wither Skeleton pet can be fantastic for damage, especially when on floor 7. The Tiger pet can also be fantastic for damage, especially if you want to add some ferocity, as can the Lion pet. But unfortunately, the high tiers of all those pets are very expensive, so if you're more early/early mid game, I would recommend the Griffin pet. It's pretty cheap, and it levels up with you, and gives you some nice all-around stat boosts that will increase your damage, just not as much as some of those more expensive pets. But you have better places to spend your coins. But if you are investing in pets, pet items are a great asset to have. For example, the Crocheted Tiger plushie will add an extra 35 attack speed and make a huge difference, which is really helpful. However, if your pet has high crit damage and crit chance, you're going to want the Golden Claws instead, and will be able to boost that further. And if you have high strength on the pet, then you want to get Antique Remedies. It's all based on which one will mathematically provide you the best perk. You will have to figure that out for yourself, because I cannot do that, because I don't know what stats you have. But those three are generally good choices. The next one should be pretty obvious. The combat skill gives you insane amounts of extra damage. As you can see, combat level 25 gives you 100% more damage to mobs. That's literally already doubling your damage, so it's very important. I've got a whole guide on how you can increase your combat XP. It will be linked at the end of this video and in the description. So I would recommend you go check it out. Accessories are the next biggest important thing. I cannot stress how important a good talisman bag is. It gives you so many extra stats. So really you're going to want as many as possible, and of course you're going to need to pick up a good power stone. I can't tell you which one that will be in this video because that would take forever and really depends on your needs, but I've got videos on how you can A, get more of them, and B, have the best power stone for them, and both of those will be linked down in the description. So I highly recommend you go check those out if you want some more detailed advice on it. But the basic advice is get as many as you can, and then I would recommend the Scorched Books Reforge for a good all-around damage reforge. But that depends on your situation, and it may not be the best fit for everybody, so definitely go watch the video. Next, I have some extra tips. Next is to add the Art of War to gain an extra 5 strength, as well as, of course, adding ultimate enchants to make your weapon better. I've got a whole guide on that will also be linked down below and at the end of this video. You can level up your foraging skill more, which will make it much easier for you to deal damage, as you'll have a lot of extra strength. Because as torturous as it is, for some reason that's the skill that rewards you with extra strength. And of course, the next important thing is to get your fairy souls. This is huge, but thankfully I have a very easy guide on how you can do it, which should be on screen now along with all of the other things that I talked about if I can fit them. If you don't see the one you need, then click the buttons in the description to find it. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe. This took so long, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.